All right. Welcome to this week's live office hours. Casey, how's it going?
Things are good. Things are good. Yeah, a lot of chatter. I know you've got some kind of exciting updates
Yeah.
more so on the AI front, but yeah, been a good week so far. Hopefully the rain stays away for the long weekend,
Heck
but
yeah.
yeah, things are good.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes weeks go by in tech and not much changes. Everybody's, deep working and stuff and then you have a week like this week, and it was really yesterday and today where things kind of come out of the woodworks, and it vindicates all the people that are like, hey, this stuff is here now, it's scaling exponentially, like this is real, not some sci-fi kind of thing. And so I want to cover a few things. um, I'll save what I think is the coolest for last, but I've got like probably 3 or 4 things that I want to kind of showcase to kind of get people understanding where things are going right now. And I'm going to bring it, kind of in alignment with like how this could affect like, Amazon sellers and stuff like that, kind of keep it,
Sure.
on task here. So let me share my screen here. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is, there we go. We got my screen here. Okay, so Google I/O was yesterday. This is like Apple's WWDC. It's like an annual developer. They announce a bunch of cool stuff. And so, I obviously watched the highlights of the keynote. A lot of amazing stuff here coming with AI. The thing that really caught my attention was their glasses. So they're building the platform so you can build your own version of this, which that's important for what I'm about to say and how this relates to sellers in a bit. These are a nice looking pair of glasses, and they actually partnered with Warby Parker and some other company I haven't heard of. So they're actually going to make these look amazing. Like you'll want to wear these. What's so interesting about these is what they can do. It's not just like a heads up display that shows like, static data. This is like you're having conversations with it. It's doing things for you. It's remembering things for you. So like, hey, what was the coffee place that it was on my mug. I forgot what it was called. And like, oh, let me search. Oh yeah, it was this place. And you say, cool, I wanted to meet up with this person. He wanted to grab coffee. Can you add it to our calendar for today at 2 p.m. and like we want to go there? And it goes, yeah, sure. I know who that person is. All these things, and like the guys, wearing the glasses now, and they basically. Can you hear that?
Slightly.
Okay, so like it can do search. It's understanding like, what does this mean, right? Yeah, here's what I was talking about a second ago. So it's like looking up the coffee shop.
From what I can tell, it's a vibrant coffee shop on Castro Street. Great memory.
And so there's points in this where she, okay, so like here it's bringing up like photos. I know this is not the best way to see this, but now it's doing directions. And what's so interesting is when she looks down, it gives her like actual GPS coordinates,
Interesting.
which is so cool. But like you can take pictures with it, take videos, whatever. What's cool about this though is they're developing this thing called Android XR. So it's the platform that's allowing this to happen. It's the software. And what's important about this is developers can build software with this. So you can imagine going into a store doing RA, having these on and have it be like, understand what products I'm looking at, run the analysis, and then tell me what's interesting and what I should look at. So now you're not blindly scanning everything. It's pre-scanning everything for you and saying, hey, here's the 5 things on this aisle that you should really take a look at. That is very interesting. So I think, this is a prototype. It's not launching. They didn't announce like, hey, this is going live, but like it just proves that technically this is possible now. So, this is like super, super cool. They showed a lot of other stuff that was absolutely mind-blowing as well with AI. The other thing that I really want to show is Figure. So I've talked about Figure quite a bit on the robotics side. Here's their latest update. On Friday, Figure completed a 20-hour run of back-to-back shifts on the BMW X3 production line. We've been running 10-hour shifts for several weeks now, and as far as we know, Figure and BMW are the first in the world to do this with humanoid robots. So we're not talking like we have this little lab that's like really, in a controlled environment and like we're letting these things run. This is actual BMW, like BMW's largest American plant. And these things are running full shifts. Like
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is right. And I know I talk about these things with the team all the time internally. And so you guys have kind of seen the progress of this where it's like, oh, that's cool. But it's like in their lab. And now it's like, now it's at BMW. And like now it's doing actual work. It's not doing crazy work, but it's doing work. And that's absolutely incredible. And then what's so funny is Tesla is something similar. I think it's on this channel here. Talking about the Tesla robot. Let's see if I can find it. Let's do this. A new update came out for the Tesla robot. Yeah, here we go. They are generalizing skills. Right? Like it's like, oh, cool. It's putting a bag in a trash can. That's not hard. Yeah, for a human, it's not hard. For a robot, this is actually incredibly intricate. And it can do two different things with both hands, which as humans we're used to doing. But now this can do that. And like they're just showcasing how generalizable this is. Right? Like literally using like a vacuum. Like this is crazy. So all these things that I keep talking about, again, they're not futuristic anymore. They're here. They just got to scale out and get the cost down quite a bit.
Right.
So when I say you could have one of these in your homes, like I'm not joking. Like it's showcasing, you could be like, hey, can you take out the trash? It's like, yeah, I got you. And then must mention today that they're getting to a point where the robot, you can basically train it on YouTube data. Like videos. So you can be like, hey, like here's how to do X. And it goes, okay, cool. Now I know how to do X. And it's just like nuts.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it makes sense that they would start kind of like with those simpler, more monotonous tasks. Because I mean, we always talk about just tools in general. This also includes AI. You want them to kind of free up more time for you to do more advanced or more complex things. So starting with, your basic house chores actually is super impactful by freeing up that additional time. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly it's able to ramp up. And then like on the YouTube training thing, that's something we as humans have been accustomed to for probably the last 20 years, using YouTube as a primary source of information.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see how effectively, and I mean, it's all going to come down to having very intelligent and written, composed YouTube videos as the main training source, but it'll be interesting to see how quickly and effectively it's able to learn from videos, and then more complex videos as they continue to ramp up as well.
Like imagine like a master class, right? Have you ever taken a master class?
Yeah.
They're so cool, right? There's ones on like cooking. You just be like, all right, watch all these from Gordon Ramsay, and now you know how to cook incredibly well, right? And it's funny because it's like, oh, this is going to be super expensive. They're pegging the cost to like 20 grand in total, maybe 25, 30K. But, amortized over, that might be $300-500 a month. But, a biweekly house cleaner is about $220, about $200 to $250, maybe $300, depending on where you're at in the States per month. But you would have this thing 24/7.
Right.
Like, holy crap. Now, the one that gets me even more excited is what's playing right now. So for those of you not familiar, Jony Ive was the lead design guru at Apple. He designed the first iPhone. He designed MacBook Pros. This guy is absolutely incredible. I mean, he is amazing. Like a once in a generation kind of person. And he has partnered. Well, not partnered. What happened is he had a design firm, started working with OpenAI on some ideas. They realized it was feasible. They then started a third company called IO. And now OpenAI has essentially merged IO into OpenAI. And they're building AI hardware now. And what does that mean exactly? We're not quite sure. But, I'll showcase this, this little Rabbit R1 guy. Is it great? No, it's more of like a, it's novel. But the reason why I got it is because I like this form function. I think I like when people play with what would the phone look like in today's age if you were to build it from scratch, with all the AI advancements we have and stuff like that. Like, would it be the same? And I don't think it would. And so I think what's happening is they're building software or hardware like that, like an AI first operating system. What does that look like? Who knows? But what was super interesting about the video, they don't showcase anything. They're like, hey, like we're working on this, we'll have something launched next year. But there was a small comment made of like, oh, Sam Altman says, hey, you sent me a prototype to play with and test, and it's absolutely blowing my mind right now. So like they already have something workable. Is it probably perfect? No, but it's in a testable stage. So who knows what that means, but it's really exciting. I mean, this is some crazy stuff, and I think we're going to have to reinvent everything we do. Like right now, like sourcing apps as an example, like it's an app, you pull it up, you have your workflows and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff may change, and I think for the better, right? I think it becomes more human, where you're like, hey, like do this task for me, and it's like, cool, I'll go do that for you. Things that we're already doing on computers. So like Raycast is a Mac app that I use quite a bit. It's got AI extensions, so I can just say like at messages, hey, text this person and say what's up, and it just goes, oh cool, I know what that means, I'll go do the work for you. I just told it what to do. I didn't open up messages and type it out and stuff like that, right? I just told it what I wanted to do. But you can imagine that at like a deeper level at the operating system, where you're just like, I need this done, and it goes, cool, I'll just go do it. like minimal friction for those things. We're like, hey, text this person and check on this. And it's like, cool, I know who you're talking about, I know what you're talking about, I have the context, like let's move on. Absolutely crazy. So it's not like a massive launch right now, but man, it's very exciting. It's very dumbfounding. I'm very just hoping that it's what I think it is. I'm sure they have their own, they're in it, right? So they have way more understanding than I do, but it's absolutely phenomenal what's happening right now. So what's cool is like we get to witness this, right? We get to like see how this changes. Like there might be a new iPhone moment where it's just like a whole different paradigm. You're like, oh my God, like I have to rethink like how I use this device now. And it's going to open up so much possibilities. I mean, before the iPhone, there was no concept of a mobile app, right? You just had a phone and there's some built-in games and like that was it. But now we have like a whole ecosystem of app developers building solutions for mobile. So what does that look like in this AI world? Who knows? I have no freaking clue.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I know we've talked about like a lot of these AI tools, specifically like ChatGPT. What's the tool you use that you put like your projects into?
Claude.
Yeah. So like ChatGPT and Claude, like we've talked about those tools being very impactful, especially for manager individuals or manager type people, where they're very efficient and succinct at giving instructions and teaching things, especially in the ChatGPT kind of Claude scenario. It's really important, the context and information that you provide for it to be able to give you the best feedback, insight, information, whatever it may be. So it'll be interesting to see as, OpenAI starts to kind of focus more on this hardware, if it is still kind of in that sense where you do still have to be very intelligent in how you're teaching what it's supposed to be doing in the long term. But if they kind of make it a little bit easier or more intelligent in terms of being able to pick up on context that may not be explicitly stated. And then separately, I know we always talk about like AI is a very effective tool, but each version of AI is built for a specific purpose or a specific function. It'll be interesting to see as they make more updates and releases, if it is with gear or designed with a specific function in mind, or if it is very much like open concept, plug and play, however you like. Kind of like obviously the Tesla example, you can use YouTube videos for training. Like that's kind of more in that all purpose or all functioning line of thinking. So it'll be interesting to see the follow-up announcements and the progression that they continue to release and loop the public into there.
Yeah, I've been listening to Sam Altman talk about like how he's thinking about, because there's so many models and they're building specialized models. Like they just came out with Codex, which is for coding. And the lead product guy was being interviewed talking about it. And, he was basically asked like, how are you guys thinking about this? Are you building these sub models and like, they're just going to stay that way or what? He's like, no, what we want to have happen is they all get converged. So we split one out to get really, really good at one particular task. And then we merge it in with the main one. And now the main one can do that as well. And so instead of choosing what model you want to work with, because certain models are better at certain things, you just jump in, ask your question or whatever, and it understands where to go to get the best result. So it's more like a super app in that kind of framework. So who knows, man? Like, is the future of a phone just a chat?
Yeah, I think
You know?
well, it'll
It's
be
weird.
interesting because I mean, we obviously have like Siri right now, which is not AI,
Garbage.
but like that's yeah, it's obviously it's not very intelligent, but I think that'll probably be the first area where we see the biggest impact using
Yeah.
Siri and it being more insightful or being able to do more things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny. I mean, as we talk about it bleeding into hardware, it's hard for me. I mean, you might have more insights or ideas in terms of like what that might look like, but
Yeah.
in terms of like actually using a product or a physical piece device, whatever it may be, it'll be interesting to see what that AI functionality looks like because I
Yeah.
can't really picture what that looks
Me,
like because
me neither. Yeah.
so it's hard to like imagine
It's a whole
what a car
new
looks like. I've
concept.
never seen a car kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a whole new paradigm. So it's like, we can philosophize it all day long, but it might look somewhat familiar. It might be so alien feeling at first that you're like, whoa, just because like the interaction I'm gonna say necessitate. That's not a word. Necessitates
yeah.
necessitates something very different and unique. So yeah, who really knows? But yeah, it's a very exciting thing. There's a lot of big unknowns right now in terms of how things are going to play out, but things are heating up,
Definitely.
right? And what's funny is probably 3 to 6 months ago, I'm like, no, these things will be here in like 3 to 6 months, and like here we are, right? Like it sounds so outlandish until they start to happen, and you're like, oh wait, hold on, this is moving way faster than I thought it was. Like we will most likely, I mean, was it Cybercab by Tesla? Just got approval to start testing next month in certain zones. Okay, a lot of people are like, oh, it's probably like 2-3 years out, but Waymo's already moving. Waymo's already out. You can use that now, and the Cybercab's going to roll out relatively fast. I think there's 1,500 Waymos in total in the fleet, and then Tesla's trying to ramp up to 1,500 as quickly as possible, and then go to tens of thousands, right? So they're going to scale incredibly fast, just how they operate. So I'm telling you, man, I think, the world is going to look very, very different in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm so excited for it because it's going to be so sci-fi, hopefully for the positive.
Yeah, hopefully we don't bleed into the Terminator realm just yet. But yeah, it's funny. I mean, I had some friends who were out in San Francisco for a tech conference, and unsurprisingly, that's one of the cities where you can have a driverless Uber or Lyft or whatever it may be. One friend really liked it. One friend said it was a little uneasy. Not that anything went wrong, but it was kind of just
it's different.
Trying to wrap your mind around that. So yeah, it will be interesting to kind of see the big waves that are made and then how quickly they're adopted in various areas. Like I personally don't know how a driverless Uber would work in Boston because it is such a traffic dense and not very logical traffic pattern city.
It's accurate. It's so accurate.
So I would hope that Boston's a little bit lower on the list for cities and stuff like that.
But if you can solve Boston, you can solve most places.
Oh, definitely. There's more people in New York, but it's a grid and it's every other street's one way. Like that's way easier to kind of compute.
It's organized
as opposed to, Storo Drive where the height will always hit moving trucks on moving day and stuff like that. So.
For sure. Well, another thought came to mind of something that recently got released, like OpenAI's memory functionality got massively improved. You can be, it'll pick up implicit things, but you can explicitly be like, hey, remember this. And I've made bold predictions in the past of, having an AI that understands your business way better than you ever could. And how is that accomplished? Well, it's accomplished with a certain level of intelligence and enough context. And in AI, there's this concept called a context window. It's basically the memory of the exact conversation you're having, right? So it's not everything. It's just the conversation you're currently having. And that keeps increasing dramatically. And there's a method at which, or a level at which the context window is so large, you realistically wouldn't hit the cap for a very, very long time. And just imagine dumping in all your company data, all your sales information, all your sourcing information. And now if you're unsure of what to do, you go to your AI and just say like, hey, I really need to get better at sourcing, or, hey, I want to 3x my sourcing volume. How do I do that? Well, it's already going to know the details of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so it might not be perfect, but it can at least avoid what I like to call the blank page problem, where you have this big problem and you're just staring at a blank page. You don't know where to get started, but you have the question, and it can at least start to guide you towards finding a solution and making recommendations. We're fairly there now. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So I'm telling you, I think sellers are about to get massive superpowers in just a number of ways, right? Whether that's hardware, your prep center starts using, Android robots, and it's dramatically cheaper now. So your cost for prep goes down, or, their margins just get fatter. It depends, right? Like it could play out either which way. And then you have access to all this intelligence that you can use to just make better decisions. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're a business owner, you're making decisions, and you're a lot of times making those alone. You have more context than anybody else outside the company, obviously, but it doesn't mean that you have all the context. We have blind spots, we have biases, we have all these interesting things that make us human and fallible. But what if you could augment some of that stuff, and now you're able to not only make better decisions, you can make them faster. How fast can you now scale a reselling business because of that? I would imagine much faster. And even when you get hit with these massive, potential roadblocks of like, oh, I just don't have enough capital. Great, go have that conversation. And it might be like, well, you feel that way because of this reason, but here's really what we could do to unlock 20 grand capital right now from the business. You have these, 20 SKUs that have just sat there too long. Why don't we just, switch over to Aura? Let's liquidate them, get our capital back. And now you don't have a capital problem anymore. Or it might say, hey, is that a wholesale thing? Are you working with a brand or a distributor? And you're like, yeah. It's like, okay, well, you worked with them for a while. Yeah, about 2 years. Okay. Have you negotiated net terms? And you might not have ever come across that terminology of net terms, but it could be like, well, here's what net 30 and 60 and 45 are. Here's a draft you can send over to your brand, to your distributor, and see if you can get net 45. And it can break down the math for you, the strategy and everything. You're like, oh, it actually makes a lot of sense. Let's go ahead and do that. And now, again, I don't have a capital problem, right? When we break down things into problems where we say, okay, well, there's two types of problems. There's physics problems and knowledge problems. Most of what we're doing in business is not a physics problem. It's a knowledge problem. But what happens when you have massive amounts of access to knowledge, intelligence, strategy, all those things? Holy crap, dude. Like how could you not be excited to be a human right now? You know what I mean? Like it's dumbfounding, man.
Yeah. And I think we talk a lot about like functional and informational AI. And I think this will kind of bleed into, I don't know if actionable is the right term, but like a different subcategory within functional. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we always talk about like, this will massively increase efficiency, whether it's like, being able to make quicker decisions on sourcing a specific area of your process where it is a little bit more monotonous or could be automated in some way. And then I think like the informational piece, just being able to splice and dice data in a way that you may not have, insight on or the ability to do or aren't familiar with, and providing more actionable data in that sense. So, I mean, it will start to kind of touch or have the ability to touch every area of your process to kind of make things more efficient and help you make better decisions in the long run. Obviously, we always talk about making intelligent sourcing decisions is the best thing you can do. And this will definitely impact sourcing very heavily and lead to better results for folks.
Yeah, 1,000%. I know we had a question that kind of comes off of what we were just talking about with liquidation. So glad you mentioned about liquidating ASINs. I'm looking for a way to protect myself against price tanking, but setting mins to my BE cost, my break-even cost. I've heard different things. What are your thoughts? So it depends. If you're actually liquidating, then yes, you should go to your break-even cost. If you're trying to protect from price tanking and things of that nature, then you don't necessarily want to do that. It really depends on what's happening for that listing, right? Like I break out price tanking and product listing tanking as two different categories. So if one seller is driving the price down, they don't have a ton of units in stock, that's usually a short-term blip in my opinion. So I'm looking at Keepa in this case, and I'm saying, okay, well, is the number of competitors holding steady? Like it's not increasing. Most likely it's a short-term thing. Somebody's just liquidating. I can hold that out. On the flip side, if you see a massive ramp up of the number of competitors, that's the supply side massively increasing and the demand's not changing. Therefore, the price will go down and probably stay down until that supply gets dried out, which could take a very long time. What a lot of sellers don't realize is they're like, yeah, there's more sellers. That's not that big of a deal, but the demand hasn't changed. So now the time it takes you as the individual seller to sell through 10 units went from 2 days to 2 months just because of rotations. So in those cases, I would liquidate. I would get my money out as quickly as possible because you're going to hold it dramatically longer in that case, right? We're talking, many months in a lot of cases versus if just one seller's liquidating, cool, let them have the buy box, let them sell out their 10, 20, 50 units in like a week. It bounces back up to you and you keep on trucking. So it really just depends on like what scenario that particular listing is in. I hate to give really broad advice on this particular topic, just because there are some nuances and some context to it that matters.
Yeah.
You see anything you want to add?
Yeah. One thing that can kind of instill some confidence for you, Manuel, is the way our recommended liquidation strategy will work is it won't continually drop your price to win the buy box. So there is some initial kind of protection against price tanking kind of built into that logic. The only way it'll price tank is if you price below the buy box and then the buy box is then priced below you. So that can happen. But yeah, in that case, I definitely recommend setting your min price to your break even price so you can just recoup that capital. But I definitely recommend checking our liquidation strategy article there. That's typically what we recommend. And that'll be the best option if, like Dylan said, there is a larger number of sellers now on that listing. So the supply is increased and the demand that hasn't necessarily followed. So that will be your best bet. But also feel free to come into chat with a specific SKU. We're happy to kind of look at what may be going on and give some specific advice to that individual listing. Finn's running the chat right now, and then I'll be back on once we jump off office hours, but happy to take a look at any specific listings you're looking at there.
Yep. One thing, Casey, you and I were kind of chatting about before we kind of went live was OpenAI is starting to feel like the modern Apple. Apple's been falling really behind on a lot. Like, why isn't Siri absolutely amazing? Like, it's possible. It seems like, and that just hasn't been the case. I don't know if they're just being really slow to figure out how the market's going to play out. That's usually how they are. They're usually not first to market. They're usually on the perfection of market. But man, this whole like concept of like Johnny Ive going over to OpenAI, it really does feel like they could be the next Apple. Like they could build a new generation of computers, of phones that fundamentally change everything. And just kind of, scrolling through Twitter here on my feed, my feed on Twitter's half FBA and Walmart people, half AI tech nerds, which is hilarious to me, just the context switch. But it's funny just seeing how many people are just like, here's one from somebody I follow. The phone, tablet, and laptop are too rough for accessing a second brain. And that's kind of how people are thinking about Chat GPT, or just AI in general, is like, it's the second brain I have access to. It's the second intelligence. And so like, God, man, it's just, I'm almost at a loss for words. Like it's somewhat hard to wrap your mind around because this is so fundamentally new that we're like, we have no idea what this is going to look like, if it's going to work, no clue. But it's so cool to see two people who have the highest probability of pulling this off working on it. And you're like, all right, cool. Like, it's not like, nothing against kids in a garage, but it's just like, these guys got some experience, they kind of understand. They've gone through something like this before. At least Johnny Ive has, with, transitioning from regular phones to the iPhone. I mean, he led that. So it's, man, I just, it's funny when people are like, hey, what do you think the next 2 years looks like? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I used to generally be able to be like, oh, it's probably going to look like this, but now it's just, the rate of change is starting to speed up because it is exponential, that I don't think you can necessarily predict the next 6 months really easily. I mean, general broad strokes, AI agents, robotics, sure. Yes, you're not wrong. How does that impact things? I don't know. like when do I think the first, humanoid robots go into prep centers? I think that industry is a little further behind. They're not usually very tech driven as companies, understandably. I think there will be, at least one who's paying attention to what I'm saying and looking into this stuff that, can lead the charge. But I imagine into the next 2 to 3 years, prep centers start to at least experiment with it, start to test it. So who knows? So let's see. Sam's got an interesting question here. I'm looking to learn more about AI. I'm looking for some course or some type of boot camp to take. Any suggestions or where to start? Courses and boot camps are mainly going to be for building large language models and things of that nature and fine tuning and stuff. If you're an engineer, I think that's great. If you're just looking to start to utilize AI, I don't think you need any courses or boot camps or anything like that. Everything I have learned has come from YouTube and Twitter, mainly Twitter. If you get plugged into the right circles on Twitter, and by that I mean just follow the most vocal people, your feed, I mean, every single day I see what comes out that's brand new. Every single day. Like I rarely miss a launch in my feed. Either because I'm following the company already, or somebody I follow was way earlier than I am and they reshare it and it surfaces up to me. That's kind of where I would start. I would start first and foremost utilizing ChatGPT, Claude, whatever. Claude is basically a large language model that competes with ChatGPT, right? So Anthropic built Claude, OpenAI built ChatGPT. They are slightly different, but they function relatively the exact same. They're just different models. Just start to play with these things, start to have conversations, start to test things. And then, what a lot of people are used to doing is saying, I have this problem, let me go find a software. Like here's the arc, right? A decade ago is I have this problem, who do I hire? And then it transitioned about, 2010s to I have this problem, what software do I buy? And then it transitioned again to I have this problem, what software do I pay monthly for access, right? Basically going away from the enterprise big contracts to I just pay for access and it's cheaper. I think now we're kind of transitioning to I have this problem, what AI software should I use to solve it? And what's interesting is right now, a lot of software is built to be, efficiency based, right? It helps organize things. So look at a CRM, right? Does a CRM necessarily do work for you? You could argue it kind of does because there might be some automations and stuff like that. I mean, does it organize for you and stuff like that? Sure. But there's no intelligence inside of that, right? It's still up to the human to go in and do the work, right? You have to move things around, right? If you have a CRM and you don't touch it for a month, nothing happened, right? Yeah, you could set some email auto stuff and that's fine. But an AI first CRM, in theory, there's Clay. I haven't played around with it quite yet, but there's a few that are injecting AI inside of the CRM to actually do things for you. So I think that's kind of where we're transitioning, where you're not paying for access to a software, you're paying for an outcome.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what I talk about with Maven, with Aura, right? It's listen, with a role-based strategy, yeah, you're having to set it up, do all these things. But with Maven, you're really just saying, hey, I want you to get the outcome that you're designed to get, and just you go do it. Not like I have to go in and manipulate you to do it with all the settings and strategies and stuff like that. You're just saying, I'm hiring you to do the work for me, which is so interesting because I didn't have this concept when we first decided on how to name Maven. I really just wanted something that registered. And for some reason I was like, we got to give it a humanist name. But now in hindsight, I really understand what I was driving at, which was that thing. It has an identity. You're saying, hey, no, Maven does that for me. Right. And so I think we're kind of getting to that. A lot of the AI software right now in this world are naming their companies and their softwares with human names. And that's the positioning, is you're hiring this AI to complete this task for you. You're not just paying for access to software anymore. So it's a very different paradigm. Now, not everything is there. Not everything is at that level. It's going to be a transitionary period, but you're starting to see that a lot more. So I think if you're wanting to get, started with AI, start to play with it, do what I just said, but also start with your problems, right? So I'll give you a great example here that's very practical. I have a lot of meetings and I have to schedule a lot of meetings, and a lot of times it's over email. I can use, and I have used Calendly, here's a link and blah, 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 but there's a lot of problems with that. If somebody needs to reschedule, it's a problem. If there's exceptions to my scheduling rule, that's a problem. So I said, okay, well, what's an AI-based email scheduler that I could use? And I found Howie.ai. And so now Howie schedules all my calls for me. And if somebody in that same email thread says, hey, actually that time doesn't work. I need to reschedule for next week. Howie handles all that via email for me. I don't even see it. I just see it get removed from my calendar. I get a notification it was rescheduled. Not involved in it. Right. And that costs like $15 a month. So it's stuff like that, right? Like there, we talk a lot about this idea of like a very generalized AI, which is, your LLM. So talking with ChatGPT is just, it's not going to do things for you. It's going to help on the knowledge side, but it's not going to like send an email for you. Right. And then you have these very practical, narrow versions of that where they take the large language model like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever. They put a lot of guardrails on it and they basically teach it how to do something. And now it can actually go and schedule emails and all this, schedule calendar events and all that stuff. So that's kind of what to think about. And I do have a list of these, by the way, that I use daily. I update this list because I test everything, which is insane sometimes. Not everything is as great as it seems. I will share this with you guys, though. If you go to dylancarter.com, I do actually have a blog post on this. So this is that blog post here. So this is my favorite AI software. And then I will add stuff to this that I actually use daily. And then, I write some different stuff. So like we've talked about using AI to basically, learn faster as a seller, right? So I wrote a blog post on exactly how I do that. So, I call it like a personal AI brain trust. I talk about basically how to do it, how it works, and how to build it. And it's actually relatively straightforward. So yeah, if you were looking for a list, screenshot this. That's a list of things I use every single day in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And Sam, what I would recommend is kind of what Dylan mentioned, just start interacting with AI. I would recommend starting with ChatGPT because it's a little bit more, for lack of a better term, like all purpose. Once you start to kind of get into more things, I know you asked what Claude was earlier in the thread. Claude is kind of an AI tool where you can upload different resources and pieces of information, and it'll use that to inform the information that it gives you when you ask various questions. But I would definitely recommend starting with your problems, like Dylan said. And one thing I've mentioned in the past on other office hours is kind of zooming out from your problem and making it the most general version of itself before dialing it back in. So if you have one very specific problem, I would maybe start like, how do I become the best FBA seller or FBM seller? And then kind of drill down more specifically, because there may be some things you haven't thought of or some insights that are new to you in previous steps leading up to that problem that can help you kind of look at things differently or make different decisions. And then dialing down into your problem it'll be able to kind of build off of the conversation that you're having with it to make the most informed or most accurate insights for you. So that's what I would recommend there. That's how I've kind of gotten up to speed on some AI things, is mostly just, for lack of a better way of saying it, just having different conversations around various problems with ChatGPT and kind of learning how you can get more out of it in that sense.
Yeah. This is a hard question when people are like, oh, how do I get started? I'm like, oh God. It's like, it's chasing curiosity and it's just getting plugged into what people are talking about. Some things feel very, they're new, they're novel. It's like, oh, it's so cool. And then you like go and test it. You're like, oh, okay, this doesn't actually work quite yet. So like I've kind of honed my taste where I'm like, I kind of know what's possible and what's not possible and what's like 80% there, but not quite. So I know, give it 3 to 6 months, they'll probably crack it. Like even with the Rabbit R1, that piece of hardware I was talking about earlier, I knew where it was. I knew what was possible and what wasn't possible, but I was like, I just like the hardware. To me, this is an artifact this is a very early artifact of where I think we will go. And so in my mind, I got this so that I can put it in a case one day and be like, here's the first iteration that totally didn't work. And then here's how it played out 2 years later. Kind of like if you go to like a phone museum and they show you the progression of a phone. Mm-hmm. It's almost like me doing that, right? It's like, I don't know why. I'm just like, I want it just for that reason. It's so funny. It's a beautiful piece of hardware too. I mean, the design on it's beautiful. It was designed by a company called Teenage Engineering, who their physical design is unparalleled. It is absolutely gorgeous. And so that's, it's like everybody was like, oh, it's not going to be perfect, don't buy it. I'm like, I know it's not perfect. That's not why I'm getting it. I'm not getting it because I think it's going to change the world. Like I'm getting it because it's an early rendition. It's an early experiment and, towards a world that I would really hope we get to at some point. and I'm cool with the $200. Like that's fine, you know. And like they're announcing all kinds of stuff right now. Like there's literally on my feed right now an announcement from them. R1 1 year later introducing memory. Cool, they just added memory. You know, do I use it daily? No. But is it a fun little parlor trick when I have friends over? I'm like, hey, talk to this like a walkie-talkie. And they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. You know, all right, cool, whatever. You know, nothing too crazy, but it's fun. You know, I very much am just a curious nerd when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And, you know, I see the trajectory, and that's what I really care about, is where are we going with this, not where is it currently at today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think like the easiest way to say it is there's not a great place to start with AI. Just start using it. Like you'll kind of learn where it works, where it doesn't, as you begin to just interact with it more. And there's not really a great like, hey, start with these questions to get a sense as to how it works, because it'll be based on context or all those different things. So just start using it in different areas. I had it build, you know, an exercise and diet plan, which I've yet to start using, but I had it do that. Had it inform my fantasy baseball draft decisions, things like that.
Yeah.
So just start using it in different ways. If you have a preconceived notion as to how to do something, maybe just throw in a question into ChatGPT, see if it has anything different, and just kind of just begin to play with it and start using it regularly as an insightful tool. I kind of look at it as like a very black and white consultant that'll strip away anything irrelevant and kind of just give you the bare bones of what you're looking for. So
yeah, and eventually you get to a point. Sorry, I'm getting a rainstorm here, so all my natural light just went away. Thanks for that. Now it's storming. So, you know, what's cool is, you can start there, and then you can say, okay, well, I wonder if the answers would be better and the conversation would be better and more personalized if I gave it more context, more information about me. And then you realize that is true. And then you say, well, what else could I give it? What better questions could I ask? How could I ask it better questions? And then, you know, I like using examples that I find on Twitter and YouTube where I'm like, oh, that's I didn't know that was possible now. And then, you know, I can go build it myself and be like, oh, that does work. Cool. You know? So it honestly, I feel like the best thing, play with it, but also just like start following people on Twitter. You'll just search AI and you'll find big name people. Like Matthew Berman is a good one. David Shapiro is pretty good. He's more on post-labor economics right now. Like that's his arc, is like what happens after like AGI hits and like what does society look like? That's his arc right now, but he's got a lot of good AI stuff. There's a lot, you know, even on YouTube, like if you search like AI agents, you'll find some good people to follow. You'll learn some cool stuff. I would say avoid the people that are teaching like innate automations that you can then sell to other people. That's the whole new guru, like internet money kind of scheme. You can still learn stuff, but a lot of what they're saying, how it works, you know, they're overselling that, you know, what it can do, in my opinion. So there's some kind of issues there. You really want to follow nerdy people who are like, let me just explain how this works, like what this is, and keep you in the loop. And then you start to realize, okay, here's what's actually working. Here's what's not quite yet there. I feel like that's the biggest task in terms of avoiding the hype, is understanding where things are truly at in the boundaries. So I might see a demo and be like, that's cool. That's been a boundary for a little while. Either they actually solve the boundary and I know who to go to see if that's true, or they're raising a ton of money, selling the idea that they will figure it out, in which case that's fine. But I know it's going to take them many months to figure that out. That's not a solved problem today. That's a, you know, next 6 to 12 months solved problem in theory, if they can pull it off. So you kind of hone your taste, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So any other questions? Again, this is open office hours. There really is no format here. There was just some really fun stuff I wanted to share with you guys to kind of kick off the conversation that just have me excited, to be honest. I think it's really cool. And I think, you know, once it starts to come into the reselling space, I think it's going to be really amazing and interesting, and have us rethink what is sourcing, what is all these different things. What does it mean to be a founder, a business owner? Like all these things I think are kind of in flux, you know, very quickly. We're having to redefine some stuff, and that's pretty fun. But any other questions we can dive into? We got about 15 minutes left on the call.
Yeah, and happy to do any screen sharing as well. If there's any specific platform questions, we can kind of show you the best way to accomplish anything. I know we did that a couple of weeks ago to kind of sort through best ways to look at just Walmart versus Amazon information or data or listings. So yeah, any platform specific questions or just general FBA, FBM, selling on Walmart questions as a whole, happy to kind of dive in and provide insights where we can.
And if not, then we will just get back to work. It's funny. Jacob King, I'm very interested in anything tips or any tips for Walmart. So on the repricing side, right now, the main focus is just matching the buy box. That just works. The way the buy box is rotating is very different. So a lot of the more complicated strategies of like raising your price in certain scenarios don't really translate well to Walmart. You end up losing the buy box and cutting sales dramatically. It's a very wait in line kind of philosophy where once you're in the buy box, you do not want to touch it. You just want to own it, crush it, sell a ton and move on. So right now from a repricing strategy standpoint, it's basically that, just match the buy box and let it ride. Now your mins and maxes matter just as much as they did on Amazon, but the strategy itself is actually fairly simplistic in a lot of ways. On the sourcing side, I would urge you to go check out Sarah Ray. She's running the Walmart Challenge right now with Chris Grant, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's this week. Yeah. Or was that last week? I forget. My weeks are starting to bleed together, but she's a wealth of knowledge on that. Her Facebook group's phenomenal. The biggest thing that I'm noticing in a lot of the sourcing side of things is there's not as much data for you to make confident buys on. So you're not going super deep, order one. You're getting like 5 to 10 units and you're testing, getting your own data, and then using that information to say, should I go deeper or should I cut my losses here? So it's a lot more experimentation on the buying side than what you're used to on Amazon, where you have a wealth of data and knowledge that you can basically be like, yeah, I've seen this before. It's going to work out totally fine. With Walmart, you just don't really know quite yet. Although that's starting to get worked on. I'm seeing a lot more software on the analytics and sourcing side of things. So hopefully that will get a little bit better. Roy, how to get accepted with Walmart was denied, not a good fit. New books, DVDs, CDs, video games. Yeah, they are a little picky. If you go to goor.com, there's a badge on the top of that page that says, hey, we're introducing Walmart. Click that, scroll down. There's an application button there. That's a unique to us link. From what we're told, that basically gives you priority access. It's not a guaranteed approval, but it does give you a better chance. And there's a lot of incentives you guys get in terms of fees and savings there. So would highly recommend you to do that. Give that a shot and see if it helps. Jacob, have any new progress been made in getting the buy box details from Walmart API? So we are getting them. There are some bugs that we're noticing. I have a open support ticket with Walmart developers right now to shore that problem up. Basically what is happening is, in a lot of cases, it's just not sending it. like actually the SKU in the report is just not there. So the whole row of data is just not included. So we're working with their team to shore that up. I've given them a handful of examples. So hopefully we can get that shored up as soon as possible. If not, we do have some ideas for workarounds for that anyways. So we always have backups. So if we can't get it, to be really reliable via the API, we'll use a workaround that we're already aware of that works to get that information. So just bear with us a little bit. This is, somewhat expected when you're working with a new platform. They're still learning as they're going as well. There's going to be some gaps in their in their data, but also like in their infrastructure that is going to cause some problems. So the best thing we can do is work directly with them to highlight those things so they're aware of them and then help them work through solving them. So hopefully we can get that sorted out for you. Yeah, awesome. Glad Casey, you're working with Jacob on that.
Yeah. And just to kind of echo what Dylan said, I mean, we rely on specifically like the buy box report as one of the main sources of information we're getting from Walmart. And in some cases, they are sending it to us. But if you actually open the buy box report, it is actually blank. So they're sending us essentially an empty file there. So yeah, like Dylan said, he's working closely with their team to try to resolve this as quickly as possible. If they're not able to kind of get their ducks in a row as quickly as we'd like you mentioned, we're kind of assessing workarounds and which one's going to be most impactful for you folks. But always happy to help you there, Jacob.
Just bear with us as we figure this out with you guys. That's all. So sometimes it's a bit out of our hands. We will keep things pushing along to get where we need to get to, but sometimes the timeline's a bit out of our hands, unfortunately. But we'll definitely keep you guys in the loop on that. Awesome. So I think we'll end it there for time. Appreciate everybody making the time to come hang out with us. Again, we do this every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. EST. We will not be doing it next week because our team will be at Proven at that conference in Orlando. That starts on Wednesday night. So we will not have office hours next week. We'll get back to a regular routine the following week. But yeah, we do this every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. EST. There is no format. We just jump in here, geek out with you guys, and make sure we can answer as many questions as we can, or just share some news and kind of geek out and have fun. But with that, we will let you get back to sourcing because that's where you make your money. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, have a good rest of the week, folks.